My name is Natalie Harper, 34 years old. I never thought I would become the kind of woman who had to sit across from a lawyer with a folder full of hotel receipts, phone records, and screenshots proving that the man I loved had been betraying me with my own sister. But life has a cruel way of turning quiet people into witnesses, and witnesses into weapons. For most of my life, I had been the responsible daughter, the one who studied, worked, saved, and swallowed disappointment without making a scene. My younger sister, Brianna, was the golden child. She could fail a class, and my parents would call it finding herself. She could quit another sales job, and they would say she was too talented to be trapped. I graduated with honors, worked 2 jobs through engineering school, and got dinner at a chain restaurant where everyone split the bill. Brianna graduated 3 years later with a mediocre GPA, and my parents threw her a party with nearly 100 guests and bought her a car. That was the rhythm of our family. I achieved, Brianna was celebrated. I endured. Brianna was protected. By the time I met Daniel Brooks, I thought I had finally found someone outside that twisted circle. He was charming in a softer way than Brianna, warm, attentive, easy to talk to. We met at a barbecue through mutual friends, and I remember how he listened when I talked about projects at work, like bridges and drainage systems were the most fascinating things in the world. He worked in marketing for a healthcare company, and he had this confidence that made people turn toward him when he spoke. After years of feeling invisible beside my sister, being seen felt dangerously close to being loved. We moved fast. 2 years later, we had a small outdoor ceremony my parents complained was too plain. Daniel smiled through it, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "Let them talk. This is ours." I believed him. We built a life in Tempe, a decent house in a good school district, 2 paid-off vehicles, steady retirement contributions, emergency savings, and 2 children who became the center of my universe. Emma was 6, sharp and thoughtful, already reading books meant for older kids. Lucas was 4, wild energy in tiny sneakers, always building towers or racing around the backyard, pretending to save the world. Every decision I made was for them. I left work at 5 whenever I could. I packed lunches, attended school events, coached weekend soccer, read bedtime stories even when I was exhausted enough to fall asleep on the carpet. Daniel used to say he loved that about me. Then slowly, he started calling it boring. It began with little comments. Why did our friends have bigger houses? Why did his coworker drive a luxury SUV while we still had practical cars? Why couldn't we take European vacations like the couples on Instagram? I would sit with him at the kitchen table, spreadsheet open, explaining that we were doing well but not rich enough to spend recklessly. 15% into retirement, college funds for the kids, 6 months of savings. That's security, I told him. Daniel would stare at the numbers like they were bars on a cage. "No, Natalie," he said once, voice cold. "That's you choosing fear over happiness." The arguments became sharper. He accused me of being cheap, controlling, emotionally distant. He said I cared more about budgets than his feelings. Then he started going out more. At first it was drinks after work, then dinners with old friends, then networking nights that ended after midnight. He came home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't his, laughing quietly at his phone before slipping it face down. When I asked where he had been, he looked wounded, like I had insulted him. "Do you hear yourself?" he'd say. "You're interrogating me." Somehow, I always ended up apologizing. Brianna started appearing around the house during that time. She came by to borrow tools, to drop something off, to help Daniel move furniture while I was at work. He mentioned it casually, too casually. My parents loved the idea. "At least Brianna is making Daniel feel supported," my mother said once, as if my sister showing up in my home when I wasn't there was an act of charity. I told myself not to be paranoid. That was the worst mistake I made. I confused denial with strength. The truth arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in March. A project meeting was canceled because a contractor had a family emergency, so I drove home around 2. I remember the sky was too bright, almost painfully clear. 2 houses down, Brianna's silver sedan was parked under a mesquite tree. Not in our driveway, not in front of the house, hidden just enough to become obvious. My stomach tightened before my mind understood why. I opened the front door quietly. The house smelled like Daniel's sandalwood soap, and something floral I recognized from Brianna's perfume. The living room was empty. Then I heard sounds from upstairs, from my bedroom. Not talking, not laughter. The kind of sounds your body understands before your brain is willing to name them. I stood in the foyer with my keys still in my hand. For one insane second, I tried to invent another explanation. Maybe a video, maybe the television, maybe anything except what it was. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't scream. I didn't throw open the door like people do in movies. I was an engineer. I knew that when a structure was collapsing, you didn't run into the rubble without knowing where the load-bearing walls were. I stepped back outside, closed the door silently, got into my car, and drove to a coffee shop 3 miles away. My hands shook so badly I spilled espresso on my sleeve. For 3 hours I worked, not cried, worked. I opened credit card statements, phone records, shared accounts, hotel charges in our own city, the Hilton downtown, a Sheraton near Tempe Marketplace, restaurant bills from places Daniel had never taken me, a jewelry store charge when I had received no gift. Calls between Daniel and Brianna late at night, early morning, hundreds of texts over months. The betrayal had not been hidden. It had been sitting inside accounts I trusted too much to check. When I came home that evening, Daniel was making pasta like nothing in the world had changed. Emma read on the couch. Lucas built a crooked tower with blocks. Daniel looked up and smiled. "How was your day?" "Interesting," I said, setting my keys down carefully. "My meeting got canceled. I came home around 2. His face drained so fast it felt like the room got colder. The wooden spoon slipped from his hand into the pot. "I didn't hear you," he whispered. "I didn't stay long," I said. We ate dinner inside a silence so thick even Emma noticed. After the kids were asleep, Daniel tried to turn me into the problem. He said I was anxious, paranoid, controlling. Maybe I needed therapy. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. Hotel charges, phone logs, dates, times. His expression changed from concern to rage. "You went through my records?" "Our records," I said. "You're sleeping with my sister." He didn't deny it. That hurt more than I expected. Instead, he cried. Not from guilt, but from resentment. He said I was never home, never spontaneous, never made him feel wanted. Brianna understood him. Brianna listened. Brianna made him feel alive. I stared at the man I had built a family with and realized he had turned my steadiness into a crime because it made his selfishness harder to justify. "I want a divorce," he said, like it was a threat. "Good," I answered. "I'll file in the morning." He looked disappointed. I think he wanted me to beg, to collapse, to give him proof that I was desperate enough to be controlled. But I was done begging for loyalty from someone who had brought betrayal into my bedroom. The next morning, I hired Patricia Chen, a family lawyer with calm eyes and a voice sharp enough to cut glass. I opened a bank account in my name only, redirected my paycheck, printed every record I had, and placed all of it in a folder labeled with the date. Patricia reviewed the evidence and gave me a small, humorless smile. "Document everything from now on," she said. "Every conversation, every expense, every lie, because this will get ugly." She was right. The divorce became ugly faster than I expected. Within a week, Daniel rented a 2-bedroom apartment across town and insisted on taking Emma and Lucas with him. He claimed the children needed stability away from my cold and controlling environment. Hearing those words come from the man who had destroyed our family felt surreal. The temporary custody order gave him the children most weekdays, while I only had alternating weekends and one dinner during the week until the final hearing. Walking out of that courthouse without my children beside me was one of the hardest moments of my life. Emma cried every Sunday evening when I had to take her back. She would wrap her little arms around my waist and whisper, "Mommy, can't I just stay home?" Lucas didn't understand the legal process. He only knew that sometimes Mommy tucked him into bed and sometimes she didn't. Every question they asked broke another piece of me, but I never answered with anger. I simply told them both parents loved them and that grown-ups were trying to solve complicated problems. Then my parents learned about the divorce. Not from me, from Brianna. Predictably, she presented herself as the innocent sister who had accidentally fallen in love. According to her version, Daniel had been lonely for years because I cared more about work than my family. Their relationship had simply grown naturally. My father called me the following afternoon. "Natalie," he sighed, "we're disappointed." "Disappointed?" I asked quietly. "You let your relationship fall apart." I closed my eyes. "Dad, did Brianna mention that she was sleeping with Daniel while we were still together?" Silence. Finally, he cleared his throat. "That's between you and Daniel." "No," I answered. "It became everyone's business the moment my own sister climbed into my bed." My mother interrupted before he could respond. "Brianna made mistakes, but she's still your sister." I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because I suddenly understood that nothing I could ever accomplish would outweigh Brianna's mistakes in their eyes. "So am I," I replied. "I'm still your daughter." Neither of them answered. I hung up first. 3 months later, the official divorce proceedings began. Daniel demanded almost everything: the house, primary custody, maximum child support, half of my retirement savings, continued health insurance. His attorney, Richard Thompson, walked into mediation carrying himself like the outcome had already been decided. Patricia, on the other hand, calmly organized her folders without showing the slightest emotion. The first settlement conference lasted nearly 4 hours. Every proposal Daniel made depended on one argument: that I wasn't a good mother. He claimed I worked too much, ignored the children, obsessed over money, created a stressful home. Patricia calmly responded with photographs from school events, volunteer logs from Emma's classroom, Lucas's soccer registration forms with my signature, pediatric appointments I attended, financial statements proving every expense had gone toward the children's future. Daniel's attorney brushed everything aside. "We'll address that during witness testimony." Patricia looked at me. She already knew what was coming. 2 weeks later, she called while I was at work. "Your sister has agreed to testify." I wasn't surprised. "What is she claiming?" Patricia sighed. "Everything." According to Brianna, I constantly yelled at Daniel. The children were frightened of me. I refused to buy clothes for them. I missed birthdays, skipped school events, controlled every dollar Daniel spent. She intended to testify that I cared more about my engineering projects than my own family. "Can she really do that?" I asked. "She can testify," Patricia answered calmly, "but she has to do it under oath." The deposition took place on a rainy Wednesday morning. Everyone was there: Daniel, Brianna, their attorney, Patricia, a court reporter, and me. Brianna arrived wearing a tailored, cream-colored suit and an expensive smile, looking as though she were attending a business conference instead of helping destroy her own sister. Richard Thompson began with simple questions. He established Brianna's relationship to me, asked how often she visited our home. Then he invited her to describe my character. She was ready. Natalie always chose work first. Natalie frightened Emma whenever she became stressed. Natalie ignored Lucas's soccer games. Natalie refused to spend money unless absolutely necessary. Natalie constantly criticized Daniel. Natalie once threw a ceramic mug across the kitchen during an argument. Every lie came smoothly, almost rehearsed. She described events with such confidence that someone who didn't know the truth might have believed every word. I kept waiting for Patricia to interrupt. She didn't. She simply kept writing notes. When Thompson finished, Patricia stood. She smiled politely. Miss Harper, approximately how often did you visit your sister's home during the previous year? Oh, maybe once a month. And were these visits usually when Natalie was home? Not always. So you frequently visited while your sister was working? Sometimes. And during those visits, were you alone with Daniel? Brianna hesitated. Occasionally. For how long? I don't remember. Hours? I suppose. Were you involved romantically with Daniel while he was still living with Natalie? Richard Thompson immediately objected. Patricia calmly replied, I'm establishing witness bias. The objection was denied. Every eye in the room shifted toward Brianna. Her confidence disappeared. Finally, she whispered, Yes. The silence afterward was almost painful. Patricia nodded once. So today you're asking this court to believe your testimony regarding your sister's parenting, despite having conducted an affair with her boyfriend? That's not why I'm here. No? I'm here to tell the truth. Patricia opened the first binder. You testified that Natalie missed Emma's spring school performance. Yes. You attended? I did. And you're certain Natalie wasn't there? Absolutely. Patricia slid a color photograph across the table. It showed me standing in the auditorium behind Emma's class. The timestamp matched the exact date Brianna had mentioned. Brianna stared without speaking. Patricia placed another document beside it. The school's visitor log. My signature, arrival time, departure time. Would you like to revise your testimony? Maybe I confused it with another event. I see. Patricia opened another folder. You also testified Natalie refused to purchase clothing for the children. She produced 12 months of credit card statements. Receipts from children's clothing stores, school uniforms, winter coats, shoes. Every purchase, every receipt, every date. Brianna shifted in her chair. Then Patricia continued. You testified Natalie threw a mug against the kitchen wall. Yes. When exactly? I don't remember. Interesting. She produced maintenance records, insurance reports, photographs of the untouched kitchen taken during the home's refinancing inspection only days after Brianna claimed the incident occurred. No damage, no repairs, nothing. The room became noticeably quieter. Richard Thompson stopped taking notes. Daniel stared at the table. But Patricia wasn't finished. She carefully dismantled every accusation one by one. Attendance records, family photographs, calendar entries, teacher emails, medical appointments, bank statements. Every fabricated story Brianna told collapsed under documented evidence. By the end of nearly 2 exhausting hours, Brianna looked nothing like the confident woman who had entered that room. She looked terrified. After everyone left, Patricia closed the conference room door. She looked directly at me. Your sister didn't simply exaggerate. She paused. She committed multiple acts of perjury. I remained silent. Patricia continued. Those lies were made under oath. What happens now? I asked quietly. If you authorize it. She folded the deposition transcript. The county prosecutor can pursue criminal charges. For several long seconds, I thought about every birthday where Brianna received more attention, every holiday, every excuse, every betrayal. Then I remembered Emma crying in the courthouse parking lot. I remembered Lucas asking why Mommy couldn't come home. I looked Patricia in the eyes. "Do it." She nodded once. "This time," I said softly, "she's finally going to learn that actions have consequences." The criminal case moved much faster than the divorce. Patricia submitted Brianna's deposition transcript, every photograph, every financial record, every school document, and every contradiction she'd exposed during questioning. The prosecutor didn't need months to decide. The evidence practically assembled itself. Brianna hadn't simply exaggerated to help Daniel. She had knowingly lied under oath in an attempt to strip me of my children. 3 weeks later, my phone rang while I was reviewing blueprints at work. It was my mother. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "They arrested Brianna." I closed my office door before answering. "I know." "How could you let this happen?" I stared out the window toward the construction site below. "Mom, I didn't make her lie." "She's your sister!" "And I'm your daughter." Silence. "You've ruined her future." "No," I answered calmly. "She ruined it herself the day she decided helping Daniel destroy my life was worth committing a crime." She hung up. That was the last meaningful conversation we ever had. Brianna's public defender immediately advised her to accept a plea agreement. Going to trial would have been a disaster. Every lie had been documented. Every contradiction was supported by evidence. Even Daniel's attorney quietly admitted there was no realistic defense. The hearing lasted less than 30 minutes. Brianna stood before the judge, looking nothing like the confident woman who had smiled across the deposition table weeks earlier. Her expensive clothes had been replaced by a plain gray suit. She avoided looking at me. The judge asked quietly, "Do you understand that you knowingly gave false testimony under oath?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And do you understand this conviction will permanently remain on your criminal record?" "Yes." The judge nodded. "You betrayed your sister." He paused. "You attempted to manipulate the family court system." Another pause. "And you damaged the integrity of this court." His voice became firmer. "People must be able to trust sworn testimony. When witnesses lie for personal gain, justice itself is threatened. I hope today's sentence reminds you that truth still matters." He sentenced Brianna to 18 months of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent criminal conviction for perjury. My parents glared at me as though I had committed the crime. I simply walked out. I had nothing left to defend. Within days, Patricia filed motions requesting that every statement Brianna had made during the divorce proceedings be excluded. The family court judge granted every request. Daniel's entire strategy collapsed overnight. Without Brianna's testimony, there was nothing left to support his claims that I was an unfit mother. Instead, attention shifted toward his own behavior. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, phone records, bank statements showing marital money spent on the affair. School officials testified that I attended conferences, volunteered regularly, and remained deeply involved in Emma and Lucas's education. Lucas's soccer coach described me as the parent who never missed practice. Teachers submitted written statements confirming I was consistently present. Daniel had nothing except excuses. The final hearing felt strangely quiet. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence for nearly 20 minutes before speaking. "Mr. Brooks," Daniel looked up. "You engaged in an affair with the petitioner's sister while living in the marital residence." His shoulders tightened. "You then participated in an attempt to influence these proceedings through knowingly false testimony." Daniel lowered his head. "The court finds that your conduct demonstrates extremely poor judgment and raises serious concerns regarding your credibility." His attorney attempted one last argument. The affair should not determine custody. Judge Morrison nodded. It doesn't. She looked directly at Daniel. Your deception does. She turned toward me. Ms. Harper, the evidence demonstrates that you have consistently provided stability, financial responsibility, educational involvement, and emotional support for your children. My hands trembled beneath the table. The court awards primary physical custody to Natalie Harper. I closed my eyes. For the first time in almost a year, I could finally breathe. Emma and Lucas were coming home. The judge continued. I retained the family home. My retirement accounts remained untouched. Daniel was ordered to reimburse approximately $8,000 spent from marital assets during the affair. Because I had primary custody, his child support request disappeared entirely. Instead, he became responsible for limited support based on his parenting schedule. Daniel looked stunned. His fantasy had evaporated. But karma wasn't finished. During the affair, Daniel had filled Brianna's head with promises. He talked about buying a beautiful house together, starting over, traveling, living without me standing in the way of his happiness. That future depended on him winning the divorce. He didn't. Within 48 hours of the final judgment, Brianna called Daniel repeatedly. He ignored every call. She sent dozens of messages. No response. Finally, she drove to his apartment. He never answered the door. A mutual acquaintance later told me Daniel had quietly moved into a smaller rental and changed his phone number. The relationship that had cost them everything didn't even survive 1 week after reality arrived. It turned out Daniel hadn't chosen Brianna because he loved her. He had chosen the excitement. Once the excitement disappeared, so did he. Brianna discovered that betrayal makes a terrible foundation for a relationship. Meanwhile, my parents continued insisting I should forgive and move forward. I chose something different. Distance. I stopped attending holidays, stopped answering calls, stopped explaining myself. Some people mistake peace for forgiveness. It isn't. Sometimes peace is simply refusing to reopen a wound. Emma and Lucas slowly began healing. Homework returned to the kitchen table every evening. Friday became movie night again. Saturday mornings meant pancakes and soccer. Sunday afternoons were for libraries, museums, parks, or simply building impossible block towers with Lucas, while Emma disappeared into another chapter book. Their laughter gradually replaced the silence that had filled the house after Daniel left. 6 months later, my supervisor called me into his office. I've watched how you've handled everything. I wasn't sure where the conversation was going. You've become our strongest project lead, he smiled. We'd like to promote you. The raise wasn't life-changing, the recognition was. I opened college investment accounts for both children, enrolled Lucas in an advanced soccer academy, bought Emma the reading tablet she'd been saving for, and surprised them with a week in San Diego. Nothing extravagant, just beaches, sandcastles, ice cream, the zoo. One evening, Emma looked up while we watched the sunset. I like home now. Those 4 words meant more than any courtroom victory. Almost exactly 1 year after the divorce, an unfamiliar number texted me. It was Brianna. The message was long. She apologized for the affair, for lying, for choosing jealousy over family. She said therapy during probation had forced her to confront the person she had become. She asked if we could start over. I read every word. Then I deleted the message, blocked the number, and put my phone back in my pocket. Some bridges aren't destroyed by anger. They're destroyed by choice. She made hers. I made mine. Looking back now, people sometimes ask whether I regret pressing charges against my own sister. My answer has never changed. She wasn't punished because she betrayed me. She was punished because she tried to destroy justice itself. As for me, I didn't win because they lost. I won because my children came home. My conscience stayed intact, and I finally understood something I should have learned years earlier. The people who truly love you never ask you to sacrifice your dignity to keep them in your life.